You know, I really like the original 70-200 f2.8 RF Canon L series lens. I mean, it's very compact, very convenient, sharp, well corrected. It was a great lens, but the fact that it couldn't take a teleconverter, that was a huge strike against a fast 70-200 2.8. And video shooters didn't love it either. I mean, really having that extendable zoom means you can't balance it nicely on a gimbal and still zoom the lens. But now we have this. So this is the brand new Canon RF 70-200 f2.8 Z, a new version, not a second version of the original 70-200. That one is still available at a lower price. So this is very cool because this has a more traditional design. It does take teleconverters, and it promises the hybrid video shooter lens that will zoom internally, not change balance very much, and also take the power zoom attachment. But this lens is very expensive. Do the ends justify the desperate need for means to be able to afford this lens in the first place? We're gonna find out. I'm Chris Nichols, this is PetaPixel, and this is our weather today. So this brand new lens has a $3,000 USD price tag. So you might be thinking, holy shit, that's so much money. I'm gonna have to sell all of my old gear to be able to afford this thing. How am I gonna do that? KEH.com is the best place. They'll take that older 70-200 2.8 RF that doesn't take teleconverters, or maybe you've got all that EF lens stuff still lying around and you're using adapters and you're like, well, maybe I can get a few bucks for this. KEH.com is the best place to do it. You know their experts will give you a fair price. Or maybe you're thinking, holy this lens is so expensive, $3,000 USD. There's no way I'm gonna buy that. Where can I get a more affordable option? Well, then you can buy those older EF telephotos with an adapter. And again, you can find it at KEH.com. So whether this lens is exactly what you wanna buy or it's way too much for you and you want something less, KEH.com is the place to do it. Check out KEH.com. That is why they are PetaPixel's official pre-owned camera gear partner. So as I stated earlier, the Z series of this 70-200 2.8 has a more traditional lens design than the ultra compact version that came before it. And this is in fact the exact same dimensions and body design as the Canon 24-105 f2.8 Z series lens. Right down to everything, the focus ring position, the zoom ring position, everything is basically identical. This lens is still very manageable though. It's not overly large for 70-200 2.8. It comes at about 1.1 kilograms, just over half a knock. That's very easy to carry around. Nice lens hood on the front here, has the cutout so you can use polarizing filters. We do have a customizable ring here at the front. I'm going to talk about that in just a bit. Manual focus ring, customizable buttons, and a nice zoom ring. I like the bevel there so I can feel where it is without having to take my eyes away from the viewfinder. And of course this zoom ring has the teeth cut out of it. These engage with the power zoom motor that just attaches into the screw holes here on the side of the lens, and that does give video shooters an option for an electronically assisted zoom mechanism. The aperture ring is another thing that video shooters are going to like, but this aperture ring has the same annoying situation that we had on the 24-105 Z series lens, and that's that it's great for videographers with its very smooth operation, and you'll get aperture control even on older camera bodies in video mode. But for photography, there's no option to make this clickable, so you don't get those nice clean stops, and you cannot even use this aperture ring to control aperture on older Canon bodies in photo mode. It'll only work on newer bodies like the R1 or R5 Mark II. And so what that means is you're probably going to customize this front customizable ring to have clickable apertures, or you're just going to do it on the body with a command dial. So for close-up capabilities, it's not great, it's not terrible either, it's kind of somewhere in between. I mean, my minimum focusing distance is 0.68 meters, so that's for me to right about there. That's my distance right there. Not bad. It does its best work at 200 millimeters, and I'm getting 0.3 times magnification. So for the occasional close-up shot or tight portrait, it's kind of fun, but it's not a macro lens. Oh, all right, so obviously professional sports player, this lens is a slam dunk when it comes to autofocusing performance. I mean, the dual Canon Nano USM motors are doing a good job here, as you can see, focusing from close to far, very snappy, and back again. So I like the autofocus performance that I'm getting on this newer 70 to 200 2.8. Another interesting thing that you guys are going to want to know for video shooting is this lens parfocal. And what I mean by that is, if I focus, for example, at 200 millimeters manually and then zoom to 70 millimeters, is it still in focus? And the answer is not exactly, but damn well close. I mean, it's essentially parfocal, which is going to be very handy for video shooters. Okay, let's talk bokeh, because on a 70 to 200 f2.8, this is a lens that gives you very shallow depth of field looks. It's great for portraits, and you want to have that nice natural looking fall off from in focus to out of focus. This lens absolutely does that. I do like the transitions that we get here, but looking at the actual specular highlights, it's actually a little bit noisier and dirtier than I thought it would be. You can see some onion rings here shooting wide open at f2.8, and a little bit of a soap bubble effect around the specular highlights. When we stop down to f5.6, we're still getting that sort of cat's eye effect in the corners. I thought that that would kind of go away a bit as we stop down, and you can again see that soap bubble effect and onion rings. And so this is going to give us slightly harsher looking out of focus areas than we might want. I actually expected it to be much better considering the cost of this lens. Now, flare on this lens is very well controlled. That's what I expected. I mean, it is an L series lens, very professional. Canon have always had nice coating, so minimal ghosting. You know, we're not really seeing any major problems here. No major loss of contrast when shooting towards bright lights. I did also want to test LoCA, longitudinal chromatic aberration. That's where you get the color fringing in the foreground and background out of focus areas, and it's very difficult to remove in post. Fortunately, as you can see here, it's not really a problem. It's ever so slight, incredibly minor. I'm not worried about it. So because this lens is designed for video shooters in mind, we wanted to test lens breathing. And that's where, as you focus a lens from near to far, do you see a field of view change happen? And this lens, as you can see, actually has minimal focus breathing. At 70 millimeters, there's basically none, as you can see here. And at 200 millimeters, it's so slight. It's still very well controlled. So you can pull focus with this lens manually and not have any of those annoying field of view changes. That, coupled with the fact that this lens is essentially parfocal, means that this is a hell of a cinema lens. Oh, my face, my beard, it's frozen shut. It feels so weird to talk, but I have to get through the sharpness talk here. So let's talk about this. Looking at our test chart, shooting here first at 70 millimeters at f2.8, you can see this lens is fantastically sharp. I mean, there's no loss of contrast. Great detail, I really like it. And then if you stop down to f5.6, honestly, I'm not seeing really any improvement. So this lens is fantastic wide open. In the corners at f2.8, you can see it's a little bit soft. Things do improve when you stop the lens down. At 200 millimeters, it's basically the same story. Tons of detail, shooting wide open at f2.8, minimal improvement if you stop down to 5.6. And the corners, again, do benefit from a little bit of stopping down. They're soft wide open, just a touch, and they do sharpen up at 5.6. Honestly, though, I still like the corner sharpness even wide open, and this lens does shoot a very flat field. So if the center's in focus, those corners are too. Now, the original 7200 2.8 RF actually had really good sharpness in the center as well, wide open. No problems there, but I do feel like this newer Z version is a little bit sharper in the corners specifically, especially wide open. The last thing I want to check is, what is our sharpness going to be like with teleconverters? Luckily, Canon's latest 2x and 1.4x teleconverters are very good. And as you can see here, we're still retaining tons of detail. So I'd absolutely happily use this lens with those converters. So I want to take a bit of time and just talk about this newer Z series lens versus the original RF 70-200 2.8. Because there is a $500 price difference right now, and you kind of have to decide which one's better for you. The original RF lens, I do love the fact that it's very compact, especially when you store it in your camera bag. It takes up less space, but when you actually have it in hand and you've extended that zoom to shoot, they are basically the same size and they're effectively the same weight. So you don't really get that advantage when you're actually shooting, just when you're storing the lens in your camera bag. Now, if you're a hybrid video photo shooter, you're absolutely going to appreciate the changes on the Z series lens. I mean, having the smooth control on the aperturing, the internal zoom, the fact that you've got the power zoom motor, those are all really nice advantages that might justify the extra cost. For photographers, that's a trickier question. I mean, this aperturing isn't very useful anyways, and it's honestly not like the first lens had an aperturing either. The main thing for me that might justify the extra cost is the fact that I can throw teleconverters on here, because that does make a 70-200 2.8 a very versatile lens that can then tackle more distant sports and some wildlife applications. And so that's something that I really missed on that first lens. Canon really puts us in a strange situation here now that we have these two 70-200 2.8 lenses, both very good optically, you know, both covering a really nice range, but both aimed at different markets. I mean, I do like the original lens, but the fact that it doesn't take teleconverters, for me personally as a photographer, that's a huge hit. And any sort of space savings, like honestly, I find this lens to be just as easy to carry around, is just as manageable. And I like the fact that we have an internal zoom. I mean, even just the fact that we don't have that extending zoom to get snow and dust and things drawn into the lens. I really like the fact that this is designed in a more traditional manner. So then which one's the best way to go if you're a photographer? The original lens does save you a little bit of money. I mean, that is a nice option, but the lack of teleconverters kills me. And I do feel like this lens, I'm paying a lot for it. It's an expensive lens, and I know that as a photographer, I'm paying for features that are largely aimed at videographers that I may or may not really use very much. But I still feel like the fact that there's no optical compromises here to get all those video features, and the fact that I get teleconverters, really kind of makes this the chief 70-200 2.8 lens to look at. And remember, this is Canon full frame RF mount, so it's not like we can get a Tamron or Sigma 7200 or 70-180 and throw it on there and save cash. And that's still a really unfortunate situation that I wish Canon would rectify. Anyways, leave your comments below. Let us know what you think about this lens or anything else you want to mention. Do check out the PetaPixel podcast. It's on this exact same channel or all your favorite podcasting apps. You can listen to us there. And check out store.petapixel.com for our updated merch section. We appreciate your support. That always helps us out a lot. And always remember, I do love you. See you soon on PetaPixel.